Good afternoon, everyone. I'll look to call this meeting to order. I'll start with some announcements. First, I'll start actually with the land acknowledgement. The City of London is situated on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, and Attawandaron. We honor and respect the history, languages, and culture of the diverse Indigenous peoples who call this territory home. The City of London is currently home to many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people today. As representatives of the people of the City of London, we are grateful to have the opportunity to work and live in this territory. Just a reminder that please check the city website for additional meeting detail information. Meetings can be viewed via live stream on YouTube and the city website. The City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communication support for meetings upon request. To make a request specific to this meeting, please contact cwc@london.ca or 519-661-2489, extension 2425. Hello to committee members and hello to guests of the committee, Councillor Pribble, Deputy Mayor Lewis. I don't think I'm missing anyone. With that, I'll go to item number 1, any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we'll move to item 2, which is the consent agenda. Now, I've been asked to pull item 2.3. Are there any additional items that councillors would like me to pull? Okay, seeing none. I do have some staff comment for 2.6, 2.9, and 2.1, but I'll put everything on consent and then we'll vote on that and then we'll have some comments. While we're getting that loaded, we can go to 2.6 if that's okay. The planned rebuild of incinerator systems at Greenway Waste Treatment Plant, single source. Thank you. Over to Ashley. Oh, sorry. Over to Ms. Ramley. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair. So Greenway Wastewater Treatment Plant houses an incinerator that processes waste sludge removed from the wastewater at all 5 of our treatment plants. So this incineration takes solids removed from the wastewater stream, burns it at high temperature, reduces it to an inert ash that is then ready for safe disposal. However, we have just one incinerator. We do not have a standby or a spare. So if it's out of service, we have to use a costly process to treat, transport, and dispose of the solids. And it's not always possible to continuously haul the stabilized waste compared to incineration that can run regularly. So hauling's not always able to keep up with process demands. So given the essential nature of the incinerator, a full rehabilitation was planned with the majority of the budget allotted for in 2024. The plan was that this would allow the incinerator to remain in service for another 10 to 15 years while the next strategy for solids management is finalized. Unfortunately, recent emergency repairs, ductwork failures, and observations on the overall condition of the incinerator shell have forced a change in the timing. Preparations are underway to commence work as soon as possible rather than waiting until 2024. We believe delaying this work will result in further emergency repairs and procurements, as well as unplanned downtime and hauling costs. As it stands, we already have another emergency repair underway. So as a result, the primary purpose of this report is to seek approval to advance a portion of the budget currently allocated to 2024 to the current year for immediate use for some key procurements. It also seeks advance approval for the single source procurement of certain goods and services.
Thank you for that. Were there any questions on item 2.6? Okay, thank you. I appreciate all that background information. I think it's really helpful to us and to the public to hear all of that explanation and the details that were provided in the report as well as it relates to the rationale behind this rebuild. Okay, with that, I will open for consent the items that we are putting forward, 2.1 to 210, and pulled was 2.3, and then I'll take any additional questions or comments. Councillor Van Meerbergen? Yep, go ahead. Do you want to vote verbal? Oh, you're on mute. You're still on mute. Can you hear me? You're still on mute. You might be having some microphone issues. I can't unmute you, unfortunately, either. Do you know how to unmute him on here?
Madam Chair, I'm just wondering if anyone has moved or seconded this motion?
Thank you for that reminder. Yes, we'll look for a mover. Councillor Cuddy? Oh, and thank you. And Councillor Van Meerbergen for the second. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Closing the vote, the motion passes 6-0.
Before we go to item 2.3, I'll look for staff comment on 2.9, which is the Renew London Infrastructure Construction Program. Just a little bit of background, and I know there's some questions as well.
Thank you, and through the chair. Good afternoon. My name is Jenny Dan. I'm the Director of Construction and Infrastructure Services. And so I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to provide a brief introduction to this year's annual Renew London report. It outlines the city's successes and lessons learned from 2022's construction program. It also previews the important work that's planned for 2023, flags some potential risks, and the measures that we're taking to mitigate those risks. As the report notes, last year the city managed approximately $190 million in infrastructure construction projects. This included projects that enhanced road safety, improved traffic flow for all users, and helped maintain our infrastructure in a good state of repair. While 2022 was a busy and challenging year, I'm pleased to share that the vast majority of construction projects were done on time and on budget. And as we've outlined in companion reports, so item 2.10, staff are seeking contract increases of $270,000 combined, and that is to address budget pressures on two 2022 local road reconstruction projects. However, it's really important to note that of our $190 million construction program, we'll still be coming under budget overall. Our project teams continue to monitor the use of contingencies, and we're pleased to see a decrease in contingency use through 2022, and we'll be continuing to monitor that into next year. Once again, 2023 will be a record year for London's Renew construction program in terms of both the number of projects and the value of work. After $190 million last year, we are set to deliver $200 million in infrastructure projects to improve road capacity and mobility, encourage more emissions-free travel, and make it safer for people to get around no matter how they travel. This year's budgets aim to expand London's cycling network and add more pedestrian-friendly facilities while replacing our aging infrastructure underground. There's a full listing of the 2023 projects that have been plotted on a map and posted to the city's website, along with information on all of our projects online. The Renew report also identifies top 10 projects for 2023. And we've packaged those top 10 projects into a handy story map tool that shows these important projects, where they're happening, has some visuals to illustrate the improvements that are coming, and outlines the benefits of each project. That's available at london.ca/top10. Over the last 3 years, global supply chain interruptions, inflationary pressures, and labor shortage have impacted many sectors, and construction was no exception. As well, our construction industry in London and across Ontario is going through a period of considerable change with new standards, legislative requirements, and market conditions. So staff have flagged several potential risk factors for the upcoming construction season, and they may impact project budgets, schedules, or staff resources, but our team is focused on continuing to monitor industry trends, prioritize flexibility and mitigation strategies so that we're able to respond. Now, as London experiences larger and more complex construction season, the city continues to prioritize communications to ensure impacted businesses, residents, and property owners are informed before and during construction. Work on several of our 2023 projects has already started, and communication efforts are well underway. We know construction is challenging, especially in light of having a busy construction season last year. And so with another year of major projects in the core and other hotspots, our top priorities are mitigating impacts to businesses and residents and making sure the traveling public knows how to get to work, home, and their other destinations. But none of our projects are happening in isolation. Rather, we'll be coordinating our work in stages, factoring in nearby work to mitigate as much as possible. We're taking a holistic approach to everything from communications to traffic calming, wayfinding, and coordination of early works. So as we begin rolling out what will be London's busiest construction season yet, our team is in a good position to deliver these much-needed infrastructure projects on time and on budget in a way that best supports businesses and residents that are impacted. So with that, I'm happy to turn it back if there's any questions.
Thank you. I'll look for questions on item 2.9 to 10, and then any other of the items on the consent agenda, 2.1 to 2.12, excluding 2.3, which we'll deal with separately. I'll go to the mayor. Go ahead.
I have a couple questions, and I'll make some comments, particularly on the infrastructure renewal report. In the talk about communicating with residents and coordinating, particularly with the construction activity, both downtown as well as on entryways into our city, is there coordination that we do with, say, RBC Place or convention hosting assets to ensure that they have the information to know, I think about the AMO conference that we will host this year. You know, thousands of municipal officials from across the province coming. Do we inform and let the conference organizers know so that they can provide some suggestions on ways in and out of areas that they're trying to get to?
Thank you, Ms. Dan.
Yes, through the chair, we engage with all of the key stakeholders along the projects and impacted directly and indirectly. We have a construction business relations coordinator who is in direct contact with places like RBC Center. We also look forward to our annual season and any events that are happening, and then work where we can with Tourism London and any of our other event organizers to make sure that we're maintaining access with both pedestrians, any shuttles, anything that they need to have delivered, so that we're aware of that. We're also making sure that we're making things are looking nice and tidy when we have visitors coming to town.
I'm all for making sure that they can get there safely. You can do the construction after, so they're stuck downtown and have to spend their money there for as long as you'd like. So as long as we're strategic with our approach, I'm happy with that. But let me make a comment on the infrastructure renewal projects in general, through the chair, of course. For this to be our most significant infrastructure season on the heels of what was, I think, the largest that we had previously, you know, these back-to-back years really represent the infrastructure that we need to both repair, maintain, deal with life cycle maintenance, as well as grow the city with what is one of the fastest growing places in the country. I know that Ms. Dan touched on the scopes of the projects, but I wanted to highlight a couple of things from the report for the public who may be listening on the types of things that we're doing. You know, these projects will repair or reconstruct 80 lane kilometers of road, 20 kilometers of sanitary storm sewers, 12 kilometers of water mains will be rebuilt, 25 intersection improvements will be constructed to address safety concerns in growing areas, 16 kilometers of new bike lanes, 14 kilometers of new sidewalks, 26 kilometers of rehabilitated sidewalks, cycling and sidewalk infrastructure targeted to improve safety. Like, this is exceptionally important infrastructure work that we hear about often as elected officials, but also we know is key to growing our city. And underlying this, I think, is also all of the job creation that happens within our city that these construction projects make. As you know, the government of the City of London, we have, you know, the capacity to not only grow and build our city, but also we're a key driver of, you know, construction-related employment, and that's critical as well. So I kudos to our staff for managing such a large amount and large volume of construction projects, for having to do all of the coordination that will need to be done. I know that there will always be complaints. You know, there's 3 seasons of complaints. There's snow plowing season, there's, you know, spring season, and then there's construction season, right? And so, you know, we have to manage through that, but I think your efforts to both put this agenda before us and then coordinate it is much appreciated by all who will complain about the infrastructure while it's under construction, but greatly appreciated, and we always receive positive feedbacks when it's done and everybody can see the results of that important work. So I just didn't want to let this item pass by without emphasizing the importance of the scope of this work, which again addresses both our growth as well as our life cycle renewal needs within the city, keeping our infrastructure gap under control and making the investments where we need to strategically. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Pribble had his hand up next, and then I will go back to committee members.
Thank you, through the chair, to the staff, and thank you that you're mentioning that you're informing, as the mayor, for example, said, the RBC Center, et cetera. But I would like to add, if it's not just informing, if it really could be consulted and kind of look at it strategically, a couple of things, and I'll give you the feedback from the downtown community. For example, with the Briar that we just had, and the question was, you know, what difference would it make if the Queen's Street would have been delayed by 1 week, so we wait for the Briar to finish? Because again, it was a tremendously successful event, and it was challenging for people, more challenging to come downtown. But one thing isn't, and the other thing is what we just went through was the Queens between Richmond and Rideout Street. I don't know if it's miscommunication between, let's say, City and downtown London BIA, but there were 3 different dates given in terms of when these 2 roads will be completed. And these dates, they kind of differed by nine months. And there was the disappointment from, and don't get me wrong, the businesses and residents, they do understand the challenges that are going through construction companies. And then, you know, you dig it out, you find out all these things that are under that's not planned and anticipated. But again, the communication and, sorry, not just the communication, but really cooperation and to get the feedback from others, not just to inform them, this is what we are doing, these are the dates, and we are just giving it to you FYI, and this is it. To get their feedback and say, does this make sense, is really the best way to do it. I think that would improve the coordination as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Was that just a comment, no question?
Just a comment, no question.
Thank you. Councillor Trosso?
Thank you very much. This is just a massive undertaking. We just see like little pieces of this in our own neighborhoods, but when you put this together, it's truly remarkable what you're able to accomplish. I need to ask some direct questions about tree removal, which should not surprise anybody here this week. As you know, tree removal is often a point of contention, especially in the residential areas where they're smaller projects, but they add up to quite a bit. Do we have any way of monitoring on a citywide basis the aggregate scope of tree removal on an annual basis?
Deputy City Manager Scheer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do monitor the tree removals from all of our construction projects that are being forwarded by the city. We don't have a system that necessarily would monitor all private removals integrated with that, but from a construction project management, a tree removal plan or tree retention plan is developed for each project, and those are able to be rolled up together comprehensively. We are not in a position to provide this year's number because we're still doing some of our final assessments for 2023, but we have had some conversations with our colleagues in planning about a comprehensive way of managing both public and private property tree removal numbers and replanting numbers.
Councillor, follow-up?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, putting aside the private property tree removals, is there some way we could be doing a more effective aggregate overall sort of set of data points and set of information about the public street tree removal? And one of the reasons why I'm interested in pushing on this is when it comes time to replace the trees, one of the issues that seems to be arising is the size of the tree. And people naturally want a larger tree as opposed to a smaller tree when it comes time to replacement. Is there something that we could be doing from a budgetary level to provide more resources to make more space for more generous, larger tree replacements? Because I do feel as if we can at least do that, it might at least cut down or ameliorate some of the concern that people see when they're going to be losing street trees.
Deputy City Manager Scheer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. When it comes to replanting trees on projects, we have a general standard we use, which is a 50 millimeter caliper tree. So we aren't using saplings, we are using a somewhat larger, fast-growing tree. Each location, however, does require some individual assessment based on the nature of the space in terms of where we'd be replanting. Some areas we have a great deal of space in front yards, some places we have fairly narrow frontage, depends on the placement of underground utilities. So those things are evaluated through our replanting strategy, working with our urban foresters and forestry operations to make sure that we're providing the right standard in the right location. In terms of budget, we would right now assess that through each capital budget. So I don't know that we would need something like an ongoing fund to just top those up versus looking on a project by project basis as we do our planning, what would be the appropriate investment in replanting.
Is there, through the chair, is there the potential on any given project to request and get top-ups in terms of the level of tree replacement, especially in areas where we've lost very, very large historic trees?
Thank you, Ms. Scheer.
Madam Chair, yes, there certainly is the ability for us to look at a more intensive, large-scale replanting on any given project based on the physical constraints of that project itself.
And how would councilors go about triggering that project when we feel, we have very little, as councilors, we have very, very little to really say about the trees that are coming down, but I have undertaken to to push this question of tree replacement size, and I've received a number of comments over the last few weeks about how 50 calipers seems small.
Thank you, Ms. Scheer.
So, Madam Chair, we're happy to provide, as we have for the councillors, as you've come into office this term, an annual project list as to things that are upcoming in your ward. And that conversation can happen as we move forward with the design of those projects. In some, like I mentioned, in some locations, the planting of larger trees would be physically problematic. But in other locations, we may have that ability. And the best time to tackle that is actually at a design stage when we're early in the project process and able to identify that as part of our need as we do the final estimating before going to tender.
Well, thank you very much. I don't want to get into too much detail about specific projects today, but that's very helpful.
Thank you. I'll go to Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for recognizing me as a guest at your committee. I do want to just follow up on some of the comments that we heard from Councillor Pribble, and you know, with due respect to the concerns, I want to say that to Curling Canada, to Tourism London, to our hotel partners involved, quite frankly, the ability to get to Budweiser Gardens for the Briar was excellent. The shuttle buses were available. There's ample parking around the core on surface lots that's within easy walking distance of that venue. And closing down Queen did not prohibit people from really attending the Briar. If they're willing, as they need to be able to do for any downtown event, to park their car and walk 1 or 2 blocks. To expect at the door sort of access to Budweiser Gardens is unrealistic at the best of times, let alone during construction season, which this year has almost not had a winter break because Mother Nature has been a little bit cooperative with allowing us to move some things forward a little faster. I will say that the communications plan is going to be important. I hope that the Deputy City Manager is bringing forward a jetpack share pilot project to a report soon so that I'm going to be able to get to City Hall through all the construction this summer. But I will find my way as well, and I know others will too. That some of our thoroughfares that we're used to taking have to be closed for a little while doesn't mean that there aren't alternate routes available. I've discovered over this last few months that switching away from Google Maps and going to the Waze app that our staff have been recommending for years, and I should have listened to their recommendations sooner, is a lot more friendly in terms of real-time updates on where road closures and even accidents are. So I encourage people to download that app and use it as they navigate through these construction projects this summer. But also, I put the challenge back to colleagues. It's our job as councillors to communicate to our constituents. when there are road closures, when there are detours, when there are transit changes. We have a tremendous ability to communicate through our own social media platforms to our constituents. So the role is not just our staff's, it is ours. And so we need to step up to that challenge as well.
Thank you, and thank you for those comments. Okay, just checking with committee members, any additional questions or comments, 2.1 through to 2.12, and we're still going to deal with 2.3 separately. Councillor Van Meerbergen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to comment on 2.7, which is the construction of the new roundabout at Southdale Road West and Colonel Talbot. This will greatly improve traffic flow in that area. It certainly is a great improvement, and the residents are looking forward to this construction. It's obviously a piece of critical infrastructure for the continuing improvement of Southdale Road, which is such a vital arterial road for West London and the southwest area of the city. So once again, there are improvements making Southdale an easier arterial to transport oneself on, and thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you, Councillor, and I was expecting that you might comment on 2.7, so that's great. Okay, thank you. With that, we'll look to move to item 2.3, which is the Hamilton Road and Highbury Avenue intersection safety review. And I will go to Mr. McCrae for any staff comment before we take any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this report was requested by Council late last year, and it was essentially a request to review the timing of the project. There's a growth project at this intersection of Hamilton and Highbury Avenue planned for 2029 currently. It's a busy intersection, hence the need for the growth project. 58,000 vehicles, hundreds of pedestrians, and also cyclists on a typical day. The location is at the end of the freeway section of Highbury Avenue, and hence the high volumes of traffic. And this also puts pressure on safety, and the details of the safety review are included in the report. We have a good collision database that we're able to use. Safety is obviously a high priority for our transportation network. When we did the road safety strategy, one of the early action items was to create a network screening process whereby we're able to identify hotspots that need attention, and so that is a process that has been done and been updated a few times, and it lets us know where this intersection ranks in overall priority. So there are plans to improve the intersection. It's a function of the growth budget, so through the development charges, background study, and bylaw process. So that's a short intro, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And so this report is in front of us to be received today, but I'm looking for any questions from committee members on this report. Councillor McAllister.
Thank you, and through the chair, I do appreciate all the work that went into this. This is definitely an area that I hear a lot from. So this is a very timely report, considering I also have a discussion about this on March 27th with the community. And what I found interesting with the report, and I realized that the timing of the growth project is 2029, but I do really appreciate that there were recommendations put in there. And there were two recommendations that really stood out to me. In terms of the red light camera and the pavement marking improvements, those are two things that I have heard a lot in the community in terms of wanting to see those. And considering with the stats that were provided in this report that negligence is a big part of this, and that we're trying to improve the traffic safety at this intersection, I do think that these would go a long way in terms of addressing that. And With that, I would like to put forward a motion in terms of offering direction to prioritizing the red light camera and having the pavement marking improvements. And I would, yes.
Thank you. Okay, so you're looking to put forward a motion that says that you'd like staff to prioritize the red light cameras and pavement marking. Okay, do you have a seconder for your motion? Okay, Councillor Cuddy? Just a moment, we're just capturing that. Thank you, Councillor. Just to clarify, with prioritize, you mean prioritize in terms of the report or prioritize in terms of the project list?
In terms of prioritizing it as interim actions.
Thank you. I'll go to Ms. Scheer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to the pavement markings, that's an easy thing to accomplish in terms of our annual pavement marking program. I'll just maybe flip it over to Mr. McCray just to provide a little context around what prioritization could look like for the red light camera. We have a pending technical review, so that would be the context in which we'd set that priority, if that's acceptable to the councillor. I don't probably need to flip it to Mr. McCray.
Thank you. I'll go to Mr. McCray as we're still drafting and see if we need amendment at all. Go ahead.
Thanks for the interest in the program. It has been a successful program. The red light cameras have been shown to reduce the number of severe angle, like i.e. T-bone collisions at intersections. The program is self-funded through through the infractions, and there's an alignment whereby the that wouldn't necessarily be the case at all locations. And there's an alignment between the financial sustainability of the program and also the benefits of the program. So where we're able to identify needs at locations, that is where we get the best safety improvement, and it also funds itself. So there is a review to expand the red light camera program underway. And it's using that network screening approach and also going to the specific short list of locations to see where there are red light lack of compliance. So we will certainly include this location. I'm pretty sure it's in the list of locations that's being assessed. So we're happy to include this location, and the plan is to come back to this committee with the additional locations to expand the program for council's approval.
Thank you. I'm just going to go back to Councillor McAllister to see if you would look to entertain an amendment on your motion to include any language around that review.
Yeah, that would be acceptable, but just keeping in mind that the reason for the motion was to prioritize it, so I just would like to see it included on that list. And it sounds like it will be, but I just wanted to call that one out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have the motion ready for councillors to take a look at, and we had a seconder with Councillor Cuddy, so we'll look to put that motion up and then entertain discussion. I know Deputy Mayor Lewis and Councillor Cuddy both have their hand up to go next, and then the mayor. Do you want to speak to the motion?
Yes, I do, actually.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I mean, I'm going to offer some general comments, but they're kind of motion specific because these are the two items in the potential interim steps that really stuck out to me, as well as the ones that would make the most impact. I recognize there were some suggestions about speed staggering and new signage coming off the expressway. As I often am, I'm just going to be blunt. I don't think that will have any impact. With all good intentions, people don't follow the signage that's there. And so I'm not sure that extra signage and staggering that speed zone would really have much of an impact. But I was through that intersection myself this morning on the way to the London Middlesex Local Immigration Partnership gathering, and pretty sure we could have handed out 3 red light camera tickets just as I was waiting for my turn to pass through the intersection. It seems to me, as somebody who travels that route pretty frequently, that's one that's probably going to be a revenue generator. Although I recognize that you'll probably leave the one at Dundas and Clark to keep generating revenue too, since that seems to be another East End favorite spot for red light runners. But I think those would really make a difference. And I definitely noticed, knowing that I was coming to this committee today, that the pavement markings are quite faded to the point of non-existence pretty much in a couple of spots. So I think the ward councillor is on the right path here. I know this came out of a motion that came from the previous ward councillor, but I think that our new Ward 1 councillor has zeroed in on the right focus here. The infrastructure renewal is going to be years out still, but these to me make some good common sense interim steps that we can take to improve the safety at this intersection.
Councillor Cuddy?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. A question for staff and to Mr. McRae. You mentioned that the red light camera is self-funding. Is that for installation or maintenance or both?
Thank you, Mr. McRae.
That's all the program costs. So the intent, the primary purpose and driver for the program is road safety, obviously, but then out of that flows the infraction notices covering all costs. So everything from the initial camera installation to the ongoing processing of the infraction notices and review. It's all coordinated through a central processing office led by the City of Toronto. So there's some ongoing costs there, but it includes all of those.
Thank you, Mayor Morgan.
I want to make a caution to colleagues. So I fully support the portion about the pavement markings. With the red light camera program, which has been a highly successful program, I think it has been a successful program because we have taken a very technical approach to the implementation, to the locations, to the movement of the cameras, which are based on the things that Mr. McRae said, as well as the ability to create a halo effect in certain parts of the city with the cameras. And so I would caution colleagues about moving to the motion of prioritizing a certain intersection, because I think there are probably a number of ward councillors who could say, I'd like to prioritize an intersection, and we might move away from landing these things where they make sense for road safety as well as sustainability of the program, and putting them where we may perceive them to make a lot of sense. To the councillor, I think you've already got what you need here, and that is in item 4, evaluate the intersection for a potential red light camera installation, currently under review. I wouldn't elevate that to prioritizing at the expense of something that we don't know what the opportunity cost is. I would prefer to leave it with our staff to say you've heard the ward councillor's comments of concern today. You're already reviewing it, but let them do the work rather than pass some actual motion to prioritize one area over another, because I think that leads down a path of us doing this all over the city and moving away from taking that advice from our staff on where the best technical program or places for these these red light installations are, based on road safety, sustainability, and things like a halo effect. So my comments.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Trosso and then back to Councillor McAllister. Okay, thank you. Councillor McAllister.
Thank you, and through you. I do appreciate the comments by the mayor. I would say, though, and in terms of the statistics that were provided in this report, I would actually argue that it very much does justify the prioritization. It's one of the busiest intersections. It's also pretty much an on-ramp to the highway. And I do believe that, and I think it would confirm what staff would report back, but I am expressing the will of my ward and the concern really of safety. And I understand that you could make the argument for other areas, but I do think that the purpose of this report has explicitly called out that there is a dire need for this in the interim between now and the the reconstruction of the intersection. So I would respectfully ask that councillors support this because I do believe that there is a great need for it, and I do think it will go a long way in terms of increasing the safety in the area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before I put this on the floor to vote, I'm just wondering, speaking from the chair, I'm wondering if it would be okay to split this motion. I'm looking to split the motion.
I would prefer to keep it as one.
Just a moment. Thank you, Ms. Scheer.
Madam Chair, perhaps I could suggest some wording that might provide a bit of an opportunity to ensure that this goes forward in a way that's consistent with the comments I'm hearing. Perhaps in the motion, we could say that through the upcoming technical review of the red light cameras, that we establish an appropriate priority for the Highbury intersection as part of that review. And that way you will see the list, as Mayor Morgan spoke to, based on a technical review of the program, but we will absolutely ensure that this intersection is included. We believe it should be anyway, based on the volume, speeds, and collision data, but instead of setting it as a priority without having done the review, but that we would establish a priority, bring that back to council as part of that work, at which point council could choose or not choose to entertain any adjustment of that priority list for the expansion of the program.
I would agree that's the language that would make most sense. Just to that point and through the chair, when will that review be complete?
Mr. McCray?
That's anticipated mid-2023, so likely this summer.
Thank you, Mayor Morgan.
If the language is changed to reflect what the deputy city manager said, I would support the motion under that circumstance.
Thank you. Just a moment as we update that language. Okay, so we're looking to, if you refresh your screen on the current item, you should be able to see the updated wording. So that staff be recommended to establish appropriate priority of the red light camera installation pending review and the pavement markers. And if that's okay with the mover and seconder, I will put that on the floor. Thank you, sorry. Mayor Morgan.
Just so I'm clear, I'm happy with the prioritization of the pavement markings. Like, I have no issue with that. So it kind of gets wrapped up into this. So as long as staff knows that they're going to be able to do that piece without the review, I'm fine to support it. I just want to make sure the ward councillor gets that piece. I think that's a very common sense piece that makes sense.
Ms. Scheer?
If I may, Madam Chair and Madam Clerk, I would suggest that we would say that staff be recommended to establish appropriate priority of the red light camera installation in the context of the pending technical review, and that the pavement markings be prioritized for early completion in the spring of 2023. I don't believe Mr. McCray threw anything at me, so I think we're good.
Just a moment as we amend. And the pavement markings be prioritized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now I have to say it twice. We'll see how I do. Can you put up what we have potentially? And that the pavement markings be prioritized for early completion in the spring of 2023.
Okay, thank you. So that will be, again, you can refresh that on your screen. It will be open for voting.
Closing the vote, the motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Okay, any final comment on the item 2.3 before we move on? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 3, scheduled items. There are none. Item 4, there are items for direction, which there are none. Item 5, deferred matters, there were none, but is there any additional business? Thank you, Councilor McAllister.
Sorry, did we have to vote on the original motion? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. We're going to go back to vote on the original motion. Thank you. Need a mover and a seconder? Thank you. Mayor Morgan and Councilor McAllister.
Closing the vote, the motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to item number 5, any additional business? And seeing none, we're on item number 6, adjournment. Councilor Trasso and Councilor Cuddy, and all in favor. And thank you. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.